What if the greatest superhero out there isn't some person in a cape, but actually all of us acting together? That's the huge idea we're digging into today, this concept of a collective superhuman and the incredible power we have that we might not even realize.
But first, we kind of have to ask ourselves, why do we do that? From blockbuster movies to ancient myths, we seem to be completely obsessed with this idea of a lone savior. Why are we always looking to the sky, just waiting for someone else to come along and solve all our problems?
And that question, well, it leads us right into our first section. Because this whole thing isn't just some modern Hollywood trend. It turns out it's a really deep-seated part of the human story. And it's kind of wild when you look at it, right? How fiction totally mirrors history. On one side, yeah, you've got Hollywood and Superman. But on the other, you have these historical figures of faith and hope, like Christ or the Mahdi. It turns out pretty much every culture has its own version of a savior, some powerful figure that's meant to one day come and rescue humanity. This quote from a researcher named Mohammed Siddiqui just hits the nail on the head. What he's basically saying is that this longing for a savior often comes from a place of feeling, well, powerless. When a group feels overwhelmed by injustice, the idea of one powerful hero becomes this essential source of hope. Okay, so this is where it all pivots. We've spent centuries waiting. But what if, after all this time, we've been looking in the completely wrong direction? What if the power we're seeking isn't in one person, but in the connections between all of us? Yeah, that idea, that's the core of what we're talking about today. It's time to kind of flip the script on what a superhero even means. So forget the cape, forget the flying. The superhuman here is defined as a conscious, global collective. We're not talking about one person. We're talking millions, maybe even billions of us, all united by shared values and acting together, almost like a single giant living organism. I mean, just try to wrap your head around the scale of that for a second. 1 billion people, all connected, all dedicated to the same goals. 1 billion people acting as one. Seriously, what couldn't a force like that do? Okay, now let's take it a step further. What if each of those billion people kicked in just $25 a month? You'd create what's called a people's bank with 25 times $1 billion every single month. That's enough to literally, systematically end global poverty. And this slide, well, it lays it out perfectly. See, right now, we are the micro-superman. We're individuals, mostly unconscious of our collective power. A power that, let's be honest, often gets used by others for their own gain. The goal is to become the superhuman, a conscious, directed collective that uses its own immense power for its own goals. And I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little sci-fi, right? But here's the thing, it's not. This power is already shaping our world in very, very real ways. Let's look at some incredible examples. Because the proof? It's already all around us. This superhuman isn't just some cool theory. It's happening right now, getting real results. 400,000. Just think about that number. That's how many people the online community Avaaz got together for the largest climate march in history. A single coordinated action that had a direct influence on global policy. And really, their own mission statement says it all. They exist to bridge the gap between the world we have and the world most people want. They are a perfect, real-world example of how a platform can take millions of individual voices and channel them into this one super powerful collective force for change. And look at crowdfunding. This is the people's bank in action right here. Kiva has funneled over $755 million through tiny $25 microloans. Grameen Bank literally won a Nobel Peace Prize for its model of giving small loans to the poor. It's absolute proof that small individual contributions, when you pool them together, create massive economic impact. And hey, this isn't just an online thing. Over 1 billion people are part of cooperatives worldwide, and together, they provide more than 100 million jobs. That's a huge, often overlooked part of the global economy, and it's built entirely on people working together. The story out of Honduras is just a perfect little snapshot of this. So you had these farmers, right? They were basically trapped in this destructive cycle of poverty and bad agriculture. So what they do? They organized. By forming cooperatives, they brought in new farming systems, they restored the soil, and they went from deep poverty to actually producing a food surplus. That is the superhuman in action.
transforming a community from the ground up.
Okay, so we've seen the proof. This power is absolutely real. Which brings us to the big one, the most important question of all. How do we start to consciously unlock this strength for ourselves?
Well, here's the tough part to swallow. Our collective power is already being used every single day, just not always by us. Hollywood makes billions selling us the hero myth. Tech giants cash in on our collective clicks and shares. Corporations build empires on our unconscious buying habits. The crazy irony here is that they seem to get our collective strength better than we do.
Here's a really powerful way to picture it. One person, by themselves, is like a single grain of sand. But a billion people? Now you're a mountain, a force of nature with the power to completely change the landscape.
And this is where it gets super practical for all of us. You see, the true owners of wealth aren't the people with billions of dollars. It's the billions of people who buy things. Every single dollar we spend is a vote. With conscious coordination, we get to decide which companies thrive and which ones fail.
When you boil it all down, it comes to this one simple but profound shift in how we think. It's about going from, I am helpless alone, to asking the most powerful question there is. What can we do together?
And that's really the big takeaway here. The superhuman isn't some comic book hero we're waiting for. It's us. It's our potential, just waiting to be realized. The power is already in our hands. The only question left is, what are we waiting for?